Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Med List. I'm Kevin, and this is Donna, and we're so excited to bring you this episode. And speaking of so excited, Donna, I just got to celebrate, and it breaks my heart to say it, but my little guy is 6. So I just have a 6-year-old, turned 6 just a couple hours ago. Being a mom and dad, like you think there's a birthday, but the birth moment. Like you remember the minute that they're born.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. So I'm wearing red today for the little guy and his enjoyment of just everything red. It doesn't matter what it is, but his favorite things are red. And so that's sporting the polo with that on. How about for you guys, Donna? What's new?
Just a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on with the family, but all very positive and fun. And, um, you know, even when my kids are older, they still keep me on my toes and keep me very active. So it doesn't matter the age.
Yeah.
And it's been just a very fun summer and just always appreciating being together with family. Always so important.
Where did it go, Donna? I mean, I was looking at I was like, holy smokes, August 11th? What in the world? Like, where did this entire summer fly to? It's amazing how time just flies like that. And I know that for you and I, Donna, one thing that has been so much fun doing this podcast for these years, I think that us knowing there's really wonderful guests to bring on that really make the time fly every single episode that we look at the clock and we're like, oh my goodness, where did the time go? But I'm always happy to dedicate a little bit of time to our partner in Remedy Chain and talking about some of the things they're trying to do to be able to help folks to be able to find the medications they need and afford those to be able to help their families moving forward. We'll play a message from them and we'll be right back with our incredible guest.
At Remedy Chain, we know throwing away perfectly good medicine feels doubly wasteful. It's bad for the environment, and it could have been used to help a fellow human in need. So we found a remedy. Now you can donate your unused meds. Our pharmacists inspect and certify every donation so it can be safely and legally redistributed to vulnerable patients. Visit donatemymeds.org and click the Donate Meds button. Unopened, unexpired medication in original packaging is eligible for donation. Open bottles, controlled substances, and temperature-controlled meds are not eligible for donation. Once confirmed, we'll send a donation form to sign and prepaid shipping instructions. And we'll let you know once we've matched your donation with a patient in need. Together, we complete the chain. Remedy Chain. Visit donatemymeds.org today.
Excellent. So this episode, Donna, I know is very near and dear to both of our hearts. In fact, I've been talking to several family members about it. This is a dear friend of your and I's for a number of years now. And her last name is Walker, and I always call her my cousin. We're not related. We probably are somewhere down the line. I'm sure Ashley and I are related some way, some shape, some form. I sure hope so. She's an incredible person. But I'll say this, when it comes to hearing loss in that community and seeing kind of what's happened with it over the years, some of the progress, some of the lack of the progress that's happened amongst society, amongst technology, amongst clinicians. It's deeply touching for me personally, Donna, because I've got a number of family members, including my mom, that suffer from significant hearing loss, and seeing the way that impacts their daily lives and, reading behind their eyes when you're standing next to someone and you know that they have no idea what you've just said and they're trying to fill in the gaps for themselves and for you, trying to avoid any social awkwardness just because they're not able to hear, and them not feeling comfortable with saying, I didn't hear what you said. Can you please repeat yourself? I think there's so much more we can learn as clinicians and so many other things. And I'm so excited for Ashley to be on board to educate us on how we can help.
Absolutely. Yes, I'd love to welcome Ashley to the screen here. So, Ashley, we are so happy to have you with us today. And today we have with us Ashley R. Walker, who's a pharmacist, entrepreneur, and an advocate. With her personal experiences as a deaf pharmacist and advocate for the deaf and hard of hearing community, she aims to remind the world that deafness should not be viewed as a disability, but rather a unique ability. And I just love that, Ashley. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be here tonight and share some amazing history, some stories, and to help each and every one of us to do better as healthcare providers, or for anyone who's not in healthcare, what are some things that they can do to have an impact within the healthcare community as well as within the deaf and hard of hearing community.
Right. And I think, what Kevin was saying too, just a moment ago about that little bit of that look behind your eye when you just can't tell what someone is saying, or even if you think about, even if you're not hard of hearing, but you just can't communicate with someone, you don't know what they're talking about, or maybe you're in a foreign land, if you will, and in visiting, and you just you can't communicate, you don't have the same language. That can be so difficult and frustrating. So I think thinking in those areas, we can really, maybe everyone can have some kind of feeling as to what it was like to not understand somebody or hear, or be able to tell what somebody was saying because of either not being able to hear or just not even understanding what they're talking about. So I'd love for you to share with us you and your story, and your journey to pharmacy, and then to the deaf community advocacy work. I've already learned from you in our emails. So please tell us about you, and tell us a little bit about this whole world that you are advocating for.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I actually was not born deaf. I lost my hearing at the age of 4. We have absolutely no idea why. Literally missed the bad hearing and woke up deaf. There's not any hearing loss on either side of my family, but I was fortunate enough to come from a family that was like, okay, this is the challenge, but we're gonna do it together. So having that support from the beginning really did have a big impact in my life, because it helped me to get to where I am today as a pharmacist, because it was never, you can't do that. You can't hear, so it's impossible for you to do that. It was always about, what can we do so that you can participate? How do we make it accessible for you? So I learned early on about accessibility really within my family. And because I have that strong foundational support, it was easy for me to ask for it in the real world. But to be honest, the real world hasn't been kind. Um, it's no secret, even today in 2025, well, part of hearing, we have this very negative stigma. If you can't hear, you're dumb. If you can't hear, you're mute. And for a long time, we've used the term hearing impaired.
Mm-hmm.
It's offensive within the deaf and hard of hearing community, because it implies a negative connotation that there's something mentally wrong. As a matter of fact, in the state of Louisiana, it is illegal to use the term hearing impaired in a public setting. It's even banned on driver's licenses and anything. Yes, it's banned. So we're trying to change the verbiage so it doesn't have a negative impact. And I've had people say, well, what do I say? Ask the individual how do they want to be identified. Right?
Yeah.
On my journey to becoming a pharmacist, it was not easy. And I was told you why it wasn't easy, and I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, because let's be honest, in the healthcare profession in general, how many individuals do you see with a unique ability that's visible? You don't.
Right.
Then you add someone with hearing loss into the mix. How many of those do you see? In all honesty, if I remember correctly, there's less than 1% of individuals within the healthcare realm with some form of hearing loss. I personally believe it's higher than that. And the reason for that is because I've come across so many within the healthcare field who have told me in confidence, I can't hear. But I'm afraid for my boss to know, because I'm afraid they're gonna tell me I can't work anymore. So it's the real thing.
Yeah.
My journey definitely hasn't been easy, having access to class, even going on my rotation. People, it was a struggle. The idea of, okay, you have a sign language interpreter, but that interpreter is not a pharmacist. So why should we allow them to go with you? So I flipped the script. And I said, okay, if I was in the emergency room and I needed an interpreter, by law, you are required to have some form of communication available. But that interpreter that comes in is not a doctor. But are you going to deny that interpreter the ability to communicate and help facilitate communication between the patient and the healthcare provider?
Right.
That's all an interpreter does. It's bridge the gap between communication. They
Right.
make it accessible.
That's
So it's
great.
my goal in the healthcare world to say, okay, we have to do better.
Yeah.
The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed a long time ago. And here we are over 30 years later, and we've made very little progress. Very little. It's no secret that having hearing loss may just be one of the most expensive unique abilities to have. Because if you think about it, someone with vision loss, you can print a book in Braille and use it over and over and over. That's a one-time fee, right? To make a book. Someone using sign language, that's a real person, real time. And that's how they make their living. And oftentimes you have to have a team of two because it does take wear and tear on the body. So having that team helps alleviate that burden.
Wow. Ashley, do you have a favorite way to communicate? And if you could, I know with your advocacy, if you could say what would be the best way for healthcare to work with hearing and with deaf or hard of hearing, what do you think is the best way to communicate? Is there a gold standard that would be like, this would be so great to have everywhere?
No.
Okay.
Because one size does not fit all.
Right.
And if you think about it, not everybody can read lips. There are some individuals who identify as hard of hearing. They can hear exceptionally well with hearing aids. There are some who cannot hear with hearing aids at all. I have hearing aids, but I cannot understand speech without looking at it. So all my hearing aids do really is to help me to be aware there's noise going on around me. I don't know where it's coming from. I just know it's there. But in order for me to understand speech, I have to read lips. So I think it's important to have multiple avenues of communication. And you try to accommodate each individual to the best of your ability because nobody's going to have the same communication preference. And you can say, well, if you can speak in sign language, you can understand English. Not true. Definitely not true. And the reason for that is because, yes, American Sign Language uses English words, but the syntax is not the same. So to really break it down, American Sign Language is more of a concept. Very direct and very straight to the point. So it's like looking at a picture. Painting a picture, painting the scenario to make it understandable. English is my first language. It is. But if I'm honest, I understand things a lot better in American Sign Language because I'm a visual person. But I can do both. But you have so many whose first language is American Sign Language, especially if you come from a deaf family where you have generations of deaf members and your first language is American Sign Language.
Right.
English is more likely your second language.
Hmm.
So reading English and viewing sign language is completely different. So you can say, read this, and expect the individuals to understand if that's not their first language. So when you're communicating with someone with hearing loss, the single best thing that you can do, especially when you're doing medication counseling or any type of counseling, is utilize the teach back method. Because that will help you to gauge, did they really understand their care? Did they understand what to do? And when you hear what they're saying, you can fill in the gaps. And we teach.
For sure. And just so that everyone understands what the teach back method is once you've gone through counseling someone, you ask them to repeat what they've learned, how they're going to use a particular medicine, for example, and make certain that the patient is able to say that back and that it makes sense, that it's correct, so that you can take care of any type of inconsistencies during that conversation, so that when they leave, hopefully they really are leaving with the correct instructions and going to use a product properly. So thank you. Yes, that's important no matter who we speak with. There's a funny little story about that. I was speaking at a senior center once, and I had mentioned the teach back method. And somebody had said, I've never been asked to repeat anything. And I said, well, then you can turn around and say, hey, can I repeat that back? I want to make certain I have it right. And they were all just, oh, that's fabulous. I'm going to start doing that. So if you're not asked to teach back, it's really important that you take the opportunity and say, hey, can I make certain I have this straight? I want to repeat this back. And so the patient can actually use it just as much as the healthcare provider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And if you guys can see, one thing that's really interesting is we had a real life example with Ashley today. So what we stream over one of the streaming services, it doesn't have live captioning for Ashley to be able to read and look at. So, I mean, literally the skill set she's developed over the years of reading our lips, Don and I are pointing back and forth at each other between questions. So Ashley knows who to look at, during this time. So it ends up being even, in this live kind of podcast format, another time, Ashley, that you have to be able to adapt and utilize your skills in one way, shape, or form. Give us this. If you run into, let's say it's just a young person, especially you having little kids, you and I have had lots of wonderful memories talking about our kids together. But let's say you run into a child and that child is just lost their hearing, right? A similar story to yours, right? Or they were born without hearing. What's your advice to them with that adaptation component to life, some stories of inspiration? Give us an idea of how you talked to that just kind of found out hearing loss was going to be a part of their life individual.
For a child, children are my heart. I'm actually heavily involved with deaf children here in my home area. And I always tell the children, don't stop dreaming. If you want to do it, let's figure out how we can make it work. Let's figure out how we can make it accessible, because you can make anything accessible. Because there's so much advancement in technology that's going to help you do it. We just have to find it. Figure out what works best for you. I never want the children to feel like, because I can't hear, I can't do it. That's the lie that the enemy wants you to believe, and that the world wants you to believe. Yeah. And the only person that can change that is the individual themselves. If you believe you can do it, come on. I'll be your biggest cheerleader. Kevin, you talked a little bit about lip reading. I wanted to share just this little thing about lip reading. Lip reading is exhausting. It's very exhausting. I want to give you a perfect scenario of what it's like. I don't catch every word that you're saying. So while you're speaking, I'm playing jumble in my brain. So it's mentally exhausting. So imagine somebody who has a New York accent and they speak a mile a minute. It is even faster, and I'm missing a whole lot more words. But because I'm familiar and been around so long and been lip reading so long, I can almost always catch what you're going to say before you say it, based off of what we're already talking about.
Wow.
But it is exhausting to read lips all day. Then you factor in someone who doesn't have any teeth. Even harder, because our teeth help position the tongue and the movement to make the shape. So when you don't have any teeth, I'm like, what did you say? So that's why it's so hard to understand a baby.
Oh, right.
Wow.
And an adult who takes out their dentures. I'm like, can you put your teeth back in? Help me. Help you. You know.
That's so helpful, Ashley. I think that. So one thing I'll have to admit to the audience, usually whenever I get a visit with my friend Ashley, I usually almost always tear up in one way, shape, or form, because I think that there's something really beautiful about the way Ashley has handled the situation and the way she's allowed the Lord to be able to guide her in the path of dealing with one step after the next. So Ashley, my next question is really along these lines. That same child that you said to believe in themselves, to be able to know that the path that they choose is their own, right? Give them some examples of hurdles that you have crossed or barriers that you didn't know that were going to be there, to let other people know this is what a day in the life of someone like Ashley is like. And over the years, I know several stories have accumulated, but just give us a few to be able to kind of shed some light on that.
Wow. I think for me, the most challenging one for me was when I went to pharmacy school. I actually applied to pharmacy school twice, and the second time around, it was told, oh, we called the wrong person. But they didn't call the wrong person, they called the right person. Thankfully, my mom is the type of person who, if she doesn't recognize your phone number, she sends the voicemail. And they left the voicemail asking for me by my full name. So we discovered it was because I was the first staff to apply to the school.
Oh.
And they didn't know what to do. So I took that as a teaching moment and I said, okay, I know it's new. It's new for me too, because I don't know what to expect either. Because I'm stepping into new territory. I didn't have a role model. I didn't. I don't know of anyone else at the time who had hearing loss that went through pharmacy school. I don't know of anyone. So I made a deal with the school and I said, hey, I'll bring my interpreter. Just make it happen. So I showed up with an interpreter, and the very first question that was asked of me in my interview was, if you are deaf, how are you going to communicate with your patient? Just like I'm communicating with you now. But that goes to show the lack of understanding and the lack of knowledge about the deaf and hard of hearing community. And let's be real. All of us have gone to pharmacy school. Can you tell me, have you ever heard in any of your classes about the deaf and hard of hearing community? So I couldn't be mad at them because they didn't know. It's not taught. And it's amazing because we have to take a law class, but not one time did you hear mention of ADA.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sending people in the healthcare field out in the real world, and they don't have the exposure to any type of unique ability unless you have a close connection to someone who has one.
Right.
So we have to go back to the basics and say, okay, let's introduce it here instead of surprising people and they're feeling lost in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
I had to work even harder in pharmacy school because I didn't have the luxury of using a tape recorder and replaying the lectures over and over. I didn't have that luxury. I had to watch an interpreter the entire time because if I looked down, I missed the notes.
Right.
So I had a note taker, and every day after class, I would rewrite the note taker's notes while replaying the lecture in my head from the interpreter and adding in my own notes. So I killed two birds with one stone, studying at the same time and rewriting the notes. So I studied less.
Wow.
It worked out. But the slap in the face was, it didn't matter how hard I worked. It didn't matter how I proved that I was able to do it. It took me 18 months to land my first job. 18 months. It was obvious to me it wasn't because I didn't have the knowledge, because I was complimented all the time about my knowledge and what I was capable of doing. But it was, we've never had a deaf person before. We don't know what to do. And I gave up on calling. So what I started doing, knocking on doors. I wanted people to see me and stop judging me based off of a piece of paper just because you see the words deaf. My deafness does not define me. It's a part of who I am, but it doesn't define what I can and can't do. So in order for the individual to see what I can and can't do, I had to present myself in front of them and say, look, I'm capable. Let me tell you what I need in order for you to do my job. Because I'm an avid lip reader, I do this to my advantage. I just need a phone that will allow me to use video relay services. It's free.
Right.
It's not costing you a dime. Just give me what I need so that I can help the patient.
Yeah.
You know. So that's the challenge, but it's chalked up to unawareness. But I couldn't give up. I was like, I didn't go to school for 6 years.
Right.
Just throw in the towel. I took the NAPLEX, I took my law exams, and I was like, I'm not about to quit. And I have to share, along my journey and even after pharmacy school, I have met more deaf pharmacists that are out there, but they've given up. Because they're going through the same struggles I went through. And it's why I keep pushing.
Yeah.
Having a unique ability does not mean you are not capable.
Yeah.
This is my last one before I pass it down to Donna. Is you mentioned, Ashley, there's a free service totally available. You mentioned that the interpreter was there. You mentioned the note taker kind of component. Can you give the audience kind of an understanding of what are some of the services available to them as patients or as care providers that many of us just aren't aware of?
So in the school setting, if you go back to like elementary, middle school, and high school, you have what's called an individualized education plan or IEP. You can see those services added there, and oftentimes those same services can roll over to college. I've always utilized a sign language interpreter and a note taker all my life in the school setting. It's one of the reasons why I'm successful. Because without that, I'd be lost. My experience with the universities that I've attended a lot. They have an office of student affairs or office of disability services. They have it. But they only really focus on the visible disabilities and not so much the hidden disabilities, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So they don't have that exposure to it. So they're not necessarily equipped to handle it until they see it head on. And it's a learning process for both parties involved. But the best way to have a smooth transition is you have to be open-minded. And you can't lump everybody in the same category. And I see that mistake happen a lot. Even today, because I've had some preceptors reach out to me in terms of other deaf and hard of hearing who are going through the medical field and say, well, if you can do it, why can't they? Because we're not the same. We don't learn the same. So you have to meet that individual where they are.
Yeah. So, Ashley, a couple of things I want to go back to. When you were talking about the children that you work with, and I wrote down some of the things like find a way to make whatever you want to do work and figure out what is best for how you can achieve something. And all of this positive reinforcement, I couldn't help but think it's just as important to say those things to an older person who is now faced with hearing loss and to make certain that you find a way to communicate, to keep communicating, to stay engaged, to avoid isolation. I would love for you to talk a little bit about what we know with hard of hearing. And I don't really know a lot about true like young deaf people and what is their level of depression or anxiety or isolation or things like that. I can imagine that with older people, it's a big change for them. But I would think that through different times in life, like you're saying, you're trying to get accepted into a new community, whether it be a new school or a job or anything like that. Are there these similar things going on with depression, anxiety, isolation that just kind of cause other health issues for these folks?
I think it doesn't matter whether you are a child or an adult and you experience hearing loss, you will encounter anxiety. You will encounter isolation and even depression. I've experienced it myself as a child and as an adult. The isolation aspect comes from I don't fit in. Because if you, through the eyes of someone with hearing loss, it's like you have hearing people and individuals with hearing loss. I'll use myself as an example. I never felt like I quite fit in the hearing world because there's still a lot I can't do. At the same time, even though I identify as deaf, I don't quite fit in the deaf world because in the deaf world, I'm considered too hearing because of my ability to talk well, to read it well, and to adapt well. So just stuck in the middle. Where's my sense of belonging? A lot experienced that, very much so. Children who are raised in a deaf family, they don't necessarily experience it until they're out in the real world and they notice, oh, these people are hearing, but my family is all deaf and hard of hearing. So being around their family is their safe space. So it's natural to experience that anxiety when you are the only individual in the room with hearing loss. I still experience that anxiety. Even as a healthcare provider, especially when I'm meeting new people, the things that run through my mind are, am I going to understand them? Do they have an accent? Do they have a beard like Santa Claus? Those are the things, because I don't know what the patient or the doctor looks like before I meet them.
Mm-hmm.
And even as an adult who loses their hearing after being hearing for over 50 years, and you lose your hearing, I can only imagine how shell-shocking that can be because you essentially have to start all over. The things you used to be able to do, you can't do it with ease. I encounter a lot of older patients who are going through that process. And I like to remind them it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Let's find out what works for you. If that means let's get some hearing aids, we can do that. And I strive to break the stigma that's tied with hearing aids. I don't know why
Right.
hearing aids are viewed as a negative thing, but it's not.
No.
I mean, if you look at the kids, oh, they bedazzle their hearing aids. They get the colorful ones. We have waterproof ones. We have rechargeable ones. We have the ones that can go in your ear if you don't want anybody to see that you have them. I mean, there's so many options. Just pick what works for you. And don't worry about what anybody else thinks. What makes you comfortable? What's helping you keep your peace in your day-to-day living so that you can function? When you get that aspect right, it's easier for you to navigate the world because you know what you need to thrive instead of trying to fit somebody else. And I always tell people, often those with hearing loss, we have to be the ones to do the accommodation all the time.
Right.
We're the ones constantly adapting. So I say, let's challenge those that we interact. Why don't you meet me halfway? Meet me in the middle.
Yes.
And it's less draining. So that's why I want to see change in healthcare. Stop putting the burden on accessibility entirely on your patient. Because healthcare is the partnership.
Right.
But it's not a partnership if you're putting the bulk of the work on your patient.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ashley, I would love to know too, how can we do better? How can healthcare do better? How can, a doctor or a pharmacy or even a patient, how was it like the reactions for you with your patients? I'm sure that wasn't always easy. There were times, me being the first female pharmacist at a pharmacy, some people did not want to talk to me because I wasn't male, and it was a big deal. And there were some people that never spoke to me the entire time I was a pharmacist at this particular store. They would only speak to the male pharmacist. And even on the phone, like, they would just hang up. So what were some of the things that, both sides, how can we as patients who might have difficulty hearing feel comfortable saying, I'm having a hard time hearing you. We really got to do something to be comfortable with that. Or, how can the healthcare folks say, you know what, let's get this checked. You should really be more on board with getting your hearing checked or various things like that. Whoever recommends getting your hearing checked regularly? I was actually looking it up to see what the recommendation is for people like throughout time. It's like every 10 years until you're 50, then it should be every 3 years. If you're well hearing, and then after that, every 3 years after 50. I'm like, who has ever suggested that?
In order for healthcare to be better, first of all, there has to be awareness. And it starts at the education level. Make a habit of, even when you go into the workforce, make a habit of studying your community. What type of people make up my community? And when you have that knowledge in hand, you can go back to your team of doctors, nurses, whatever field you're in, and say, okay, these are the people that make up our community. Do we have what we need, or do we have the resources that we can reach out to so that we can serve our community? In terms of the deaf and hard of hearing community, each state has an agency that will provide you with the resources. Heck, if you want to do something yourself, take basic sign language courses. You don't have to be fluent at all. I know we Americans are spoiled. We want everything fast, fast, fast. Take the opportunity to slow down. Look up at your patient. Study them. Because those who are deaf and hard of hearing that come into a pharmacy or into any healthcare profession, if you look up enough and you study your patient, it's going to be very easy for you to identify something's off. But you have to be observant and pick up on those cues. For instance, someone with hearing loss, they may be slow to respond, or if you're talking to them and they're not responding. And of course, the famous death nod. Guilty of it to this day. Don't have a clue what you're saying. I'm just gonna, okay. And then when you leave, the person that's next to me, what did they say? So just be aware of the individuals that you're interacting with. And I will say this. Individuals with hearing loss, they're nervous with revealing that they have hearing loss. Why? Because they've experienced rejection over and over and over again. So if you can set yourself up to make your practice safe, inviting, and non-judgmental, that patient is more likely going to open up to you in their preferred method of communication. Don't get freaked out if you see somebody pull out their phone and text a message and show it to you, or pull out a piece of paper. There's a reason they're doing it.
Right.
But don't brush them off. And when you brush them off, guess what happens? They fall between the cracks. They end up in the emergency room. They end up taking their medication the wrong way. Or worse, they end up dead. So we have to be aware, be observant, and don't be afraid to ask. If you have any difficulty hearing, but of course, do it on the side. Don't do it in front of everybody, you know.
Love it.
So those are things that we can do to be more open-minded.
For sure.
And be willing to adapt. We have to be willing to adapt instead of placing the burden on the patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about a baby. A baby can't fend for themselves, so we have to adapt to the babies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we apply the same knowledge to individuals who need the help?
Yeah.
Tell me with this, Ashley, then we're looking to adapt. We're seeing these huge booms in technology throughout healthcare, right? There's new advancements. You see augmented or artificial intelligence, everything left and right. What is happening right now that you're excited about, that you're seeing and you're thinking we need to pay more attention here, especially for the hearing loss community to be able to take advantage of?
I think over the last couple of years, my favorite technology that has really come out that I think is really, really cool are the glasses. I mean, there are so many different variations of them. There is an interpreting agency that has the glasses, and you can use them in any space, whether it's education, work, whatever. and you have choices. One of the choices is you can have a live interpreter in 3D in the glasses, which would be beautiful in a school setting. I mean, imagine sitting in a math class. If you're looking down, you're missing all of the examples written on the board. But with the glasses, you see the interpreter and you see the board at the same time. So that's an advancement. If you're not someone who communicates using American Sign Language, you do have speech to text in the classes as well. Some of these classes allow you to record the conversation, especially if you're in the doctor's office and you can't remember. You can go back and review that conversation. So those are some cool advances. I do want to mention this. For individuals with hearing loss that communicate primarily using American Sign Language, there has been a huge jump in telephone devices. The first telephone device was the teletypewriter, which was low as molasses because say we have all three of us. I'm the left person. Kevin is the operator. And you are the speaker. Okay? So I'm calling you. So I have to dial 711, which will connect to Kevin. Kevin's the operator. Then Kevin will dial the number that I put in to call you, right? But it's very tedious because I will type something. Hello, how are you? GA. GA means go ahead. That will signal to Kevin to speak to the hearing person. Hello, how are you? You can say, I'm fine, GA. That lets Kevin know to type back to me, I'm fine, GA. Can you see how time consuming that would be? Imagine calling 911. Right? So that brings us to video relay services, which cuts that delay time way down because it's just like using FaceTime.
It's great.
There's a live person on the line. And you have the option for me, because I can use my voice, I use my own voice, so you hear me speaking the entire time.
Right.
But everything that the caller is saying, the interpreter is on screen in real time, signing to me. So it cuts down drastically on their wait time. But a lot of people are not aware of it and they hang up because they think it's a scam or a spam call or a telemarketer, because what happens is the operator will say something along the lines of, hello, this is interpreter number 4537 with Popal Video Relay Services. Please hold while I connect the caller who uses American Sign Language to communicate. Click. Can you imagine dealing with that, especially in the hiring process when you're looking for a job? I can't tell you how many interviews I have missed out on because of that. As a result, I would use my mom or my husband's phone number because they're hearing and I don't have to deal with it, and they would tell me and they would get the number, the direct number, and I would call them back.
Got it.
That's great.
So education is key. It's key.
Wow. Huge.
Ashley, I think they missed you versus you missing the actual interviews. I think they missed the opportunity to speak to you. That's what I think. Because I'm learning so much from speaking with you, and this amazing, you're amazing with what you're doing, with your advocacy, with sharing your story, with trying to get healthcare on board, which really needs to be on board. I'm taking in so much, thinking how much more I need to do with my students. I have to say that I started losing my hearing, and I could never hear the we do this directed education, so it's distance education. So there's a class in another state, and we're teaching from Massachusetts, where I am, and I could never hear when students would come in and ask a question over the distance education. And it was very frustrating for me that I could not make out what was being asked, and I'd always have to say, what are they saying? And so I finally got the courage, because you hiding it, right? I finally got the courage to ask the students in the front row, when someone speaks from the other classroom, could you please let me know what they're saying? I need an interpreter here. And that was hard for me to do. But when I finally did it, it made a huge difference. And I was so appreciative when I was able to have that interpreter. So I can imagine the frustration when you're saying, like, there's this delay, right? Or, gosh, I wish I could understand and not have this delay and be able to be prompt with my response. So it is difficult.
I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to speak up.
Right.
If we don't speak up, change is not going to happen, and it's not going to be normalized. And we need to normalize it, because we don't actually lose our hearing.
Right.
In fact, for some people, it's a part of getting older. I mean, we can't help it. It just happens.
Mhm.
But we have to normalize it and allow ourselves to give yourself grace. It doesn't take away from who you are as an individual. It does not. In fact, I personally believe it makes you a better individual, because it forces you to utilize your other senses, and you become more aware and more alert.
Yes.
When hearing aids first came out, they were analog hearing aids.
Mhm.
Nowadays, you have digital hearing aids. Completely different sound. It's a completely different sound. So I've had the experience of both.
Mm-hmm.
It was very challenging for me when I made the switch from analog to digital. I can remember my dad would threaten me to make me keep my hearing aids on, because I had to get used to it.
Yeah.
I had to get used to it. But with the digital hearing aids, I've heard things that I never heard before. I had never heard a clock tick, and I don't know how you hearing people deal with that. No. I'm like, how do you block this? So I had to learn how to block out sound with my hearing aid.
Makes sense.
Yes. Hearing a tire against the road, I thought my car was broken. And my dad laughed at me. He was like, no, you're hearing your tires against the road. So I was hearing things I had never heard before.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
it's always going to be a learning curve for me, but as I get older, my hearing aids don't function for me like they used to when I was younger.
Hmm.
So I appreciate what I can do and what I can pick up now, because eventually hearing aids are no longer going to work for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ke-
So just I have another question. So with the hearing aids, now that there's the over-the-counter hearing aids, do you have any, like, good, bad, and different, like, with that technology, things that are the public should be aware of, how to go about learning about what is the best one for individuals? Can you comment on that?
Okay. One of the things that I encourage pharmacists to be aware of is the over-the-counter hearing aids are not available for everybody.
Right.
If you have mild hearing loss, which means if I yell really loud, I can still hear you, then you qualify for the over-the-counter hearing aid. Versus someone like me, I have profound, it's not going to work for me at all. So I have one But you will, because it's advertised as over-the-counter hearing aids. You're gonna get people from every spectrum
Right.
of hearing loss come in and say, my hearing aids are broken, but these are cheaper. Can I use them? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think pharmacy with the over-the-counter hearing aids have to work hand in hand with an audiologist, because we're not taught about decibels in school. We're not.
Sure.
So if you present me with an audiogram, am I gonna know how to read it?
Mm-hmm.
If you've never been exposed to it, right?
Right.
So you gotta be mindful of that, but also from personal experience, wearing hearing aid batteries, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a pharmacy and say, hey, can you point me to where the hearing aid batteries are? They can't help me. So if you don't know where the hearing aid batteries are, how are you gonna help me with the hearing aid? So be aware of what's available. It's sad that insurance companies won't cover hearing aids. And it's ironic to me. Insurance companies are likely to cover the hearing aids if you lost your hearing on the job. But what 4-year-old do you know that has a job? So, and hearing aids are expensive. My hearing aids, because I have the big ones, the bigger the hearing aid, the more expensive. Because it's based on the power. The bigger hearing aids have more power versus the little hearing aids. If it's not a big hearing aid for me, there's no point in me getting the hearing aid. It's not going to function for me. But my hearing aids cost about $3,000 each. And I have two. And I have to replace them every 5 to 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance will not cover them.
Right. Terrible.
So
Yeah.
it sucks
Yeah.
when you have over-the-counter hearing aids, but it's only available for a small population, and they are affordable.
Yeah.
But what about those who can't afford their hearing aids?
Right.
Especially the elderly who are on fixed income.
Yes.
They're stuck.
Yes. Another issue.
So the one I had for you, Ashley, is this one. And just like usual, we are noticing that we are like right at time again, which just, it absolutely flew. And I knew with you, it would just absolutely fly, just like always. Is this, Ashley? Someone is going, I want to learn more about a cochlear implant. I want to know more about these caption glasses that are out there. I want to get other resources. Where would you send them to be able to find this information? Is there a good overall resource? Are you hunting all over on the web? Where would Dr. Ashley send folks to be able to find out something to be able to help them with their hearing loss?
Like I said, it varies by state. Whatever state you're in, you can simply type in Google resources for the deaf. Resources for the deaf and hard of hearing, and will populate what's in your area to help you. If you really want to immerse yourself and kind of learn and become more aware of the challenges and how to immerse yourself and engage with the deaf and hard of hearing community, go to an event.
Okay.
Find an event. Starbucks in many different cities, especially larger cities, they have what's called Deaf Chat at Starbucks. And you see just a group hanging out, drinking coffee, and having conversation. Go to a deaf festival. You will generally find that individuals within the deaf and hard of hearing community, they're open to welcoming hearing individuals into their world. Because how else are you going to learn? So they're open, they'll teach you sign language. If they're going too fast for you, they'll slow down. It's not offensive. You know, it's easy to spot a newbie. It is. So they'll automatically slow down for you. There is a desire to be seen in the world by the deaf and hard of hearing community. There really is, because for so long it's been on the back burner. So when you see the healing world being intentional about and being inclusive within this community, oh, the sky is the limit. Word spreads like wildfire within the Southern Heart of Hearing community. Could you imagine if you're an independent pharmacy owner and you decide, hey, I want to cater to the deaf and hard of hearing community? I guarantee you it's going to take just one person coming into a pharmacy. You make them feel included. You make them feel a part of their care. That person is going to go back and show off their friends. Hey, you want a pharmacy that's going to help you? Go over here. You're going to see your numbers go up. You will.
Absolutely.
Because you're taking the time to engage with the unique community that's often forgotten.
I love that. I love that. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for your time. We deeply, deeply appreciate you and all the knowledge you kind of passed along. I think the hopefulness, the never giving up attitude, you really started the show out with, and wanting everybody to realize that if you don't give up as a clinician, you continue to learn and you continue to be a part of these communities and to find out how can I help and how can I do more to serve my patients. And as a patient, knowing that you shouldn't give up on yourself or your dreams or the things you want to do in your life, because exactly what you said, you have to be able to find that pathway and find those resources and, have the gumption like Ashley does to ask those questions, to put yourself in the room, to actually knock on the door. And I think that's a very special thing for all of us to be able to take home. So thank you so much for that. Donna, any closing words for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the how can I help, because I know, Ashley, you had mentioned that at the beginning prior to the show. So as healthcare providers, it's really important that we ask, how can I help, in order to make certain that those that are deaf, those that are hard of hearing, they get the help that they need, that we take. And you have so many wonderful ideas as to how we can just slow down and help and be a part of the healthcare that's necessary. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to share that. I found that was true. That was my biggest note part of the show was all of that, of how we can better help. So thank you for sharing all of your great insight.
Well,
Thank you for having me.
One thing I did want to acknowledge, Ashley, is that Dolores Hart, I want to throw one of your comments up on here, Dolores. She's been listening the entire time and commenting, but all of us have been in a different video mode, so I did not see all of her comments. So thank you, Dolores, for putting all of those comments across. You acknowledging, yes, the deaf nod and the teaching that you do with your students. That's absolutely wonderful, the ALS components that you put forward, and we really appreciate you contributing to the show. Go ahead, Ashley. You had some final comments?
Thank you for having me. And for anybody that's out there listening, even if you're scared, do it anyway.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all for being here. Hopefully we'll see you next time. You can find Ashley on lots of places online. We'll put some things in the show notes. And then for us here at the MedList, we're so thankful for each one of you. Have a beautiful night.